Good morning, everybody. Glad you're here. You're in the right place. How was everybody's week? Was good? Chuck's got his hands up in the air, kind of like maybe. Well, I'm glad you guys are here for sure. That one of the songs that we played by Need to Breathe, that just gives me goosebumps. And there's a couple of lines in there. I listen to that quite a bit because it's one of my favorite songs this morning. I push you away and try to let you go, but you won't let go. And you plant roses on my barren soul. That's so powerful. Man, and it hits home a lot. Thank you very much. I'm glad you're here again. I was thinking this week, I was trying to remember how long this church has been going, and I thought it was like a decade or so. Do you guys remember how long? It's been about 19 years. So I think we're good. I think we're going to make it. Not in this building, but we've been going for 19 years. I don't know how long we've been in this building, but I think back to the food ministry, and a little bit of what I'm going to talk about today may help you out, but I've got to do my disclaimer before I start, and that is the front door's there, so if you want to leave, now's the time, but you won't be able to because we locked the doors. So anyway, I'm just kidding. No, I think you'll enjoy today. I hope so. But if you're, all joking aside, if you're looking for your purpose or a ministry or a job or something to do, and most of us here have one, the food ministry is a great place to start. And I was thinking about it this week. I remember when we first started off, we would make food boxes in the little file boxes, but we had them custom made for us that printed our name, our church name on it, and all the information. And then we would load those up. We would come here, meet, and split up into teams. And there's actually a picture of it over here of one of our meetings in the morning. And we would sign up, and you would go to a specific neighborhood. You'd go with a team of people with a dolly, and you'd carry your boxes. We'd unload a pickup truck, and we'd go door to door. And I think of sometimes, you know, how you get called by God to do something and the struggle you may have, like, man, I don't feel like working in the food ministry today. Well, think about that struggle where you're knocking on doors. And sometimes we would wake people up that worked all night. And they'd be like, man, I'm working all night. But you know what? 99.9% of the people we contacted were amazing. And whether or not they needed the food, they took it, and they always said thank you, and they were always appreciative of us being out there. And that was really fun, and you really had to push yourself to go. So they were out, and I'll be honest with you, a couple Saturdays I was asked to go, and I found some other things to do, and I no-showed a couple times, but I did most, and it was fun. And the point of that story is if you are looking for a ministry, and I'm going to hit it here today, that's a good place to start. If you don't know what God's got in store for you, that's good. And you can see Steve or Bill or anybody else that's involved in the food ministry. I know I'm leaving a bunch of people out, but it's an awesome thing. And they drive to different locations, I don't want to call them vendors, but supermarkets and things of that nature. And Bill has a great relationship with everybody. And there's good days and bad days. But since there were days early on where we didn't have food, and we had a really slow Sunday, and we got through pretty quick, within 30 minutes. Now it's the opposite. Now I think we have more food than we know what to do with. If we have to give it to a farmer at the end of the day, we have more than we need. So that's just a huge blessing. So today might be a little tough, but we're going to get through it. And that's why they have me come up here, because I'm the controversial one every now and again. So that's why I'm only up here like once a month, if that. So on the next leadership meeting, I'm sure Bill will put me about 7 or 8 weeks out, but that's okay. So my message today isn't to make you uncomfortable at all. It's not. But I want to get you out of your comfort zone. And that's huge. How many people like being out of their comfort zone? Really, you do? I love being out of my comfort zone. I need a little bit of heads up to know I'm going to be out of it, but I usually do okay. So, but I usually, most of the time, depending on what the task is, I can shine in my being out of my comfort zone. Sometimes it's pretty tough, but if I know a little bit of it's coming, I do okay. Like this week I'm on call, so that phone can ring. My phones can ring right now. So I do say a prayer every time I go on call that I don't get called out, because for me, especially with full moon, if you don't know, the full moon's going, I pay attention to that when I'm on call, there is a difference. So, and my calls usually come between 2:30 a.m. and 3, like clockwork. But so far, I'm on till Monday morning at 7. Let's hope I don't get called out. So if you want something to pray for me about, that's what you can pray about. Pray I don't get called out. God has set specific goals for your life. whether you think so or not. And on your bulletin, I'm kind of doing a little bit of a series, but I haven't talked about the series. I'm going through a book right now, and the book is amazing. And I've read through the book already, cover to cover, but I'm going back chapter to chapter, and that's what I'm basing a lot of what I talk about. Next time I'm up here, I'll let you guys know what the book is, because right now it just completely went out of my head what the name of the book is. And that happens quite a bit. Ty, I'm going to have you put up Psalms 139, verse 6. And if you have a Bible and you want to follow along, that's great, but Ty's going to put this stuff up here, and I'll read straight from the screen. I'd like to read through my book, but it'll save me time from going through all the pages. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too great for me to understand. So this knowledge comes from God. Is that 139? Yep, 139:6. I've got another verse here too. Your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed. And in your book they were all written, the days fashioned for me when as yet there was none of them. That's pretty amazing. So your plan has been laid out before you were even born. And most of us know that. But if you're new, maybe you don't know that. But every single day has been laid out for you. What are your goals as a Christian? There's going to be a couple of questions I'm going to ask you, and I don't need you to answer, but I'm just asking you. This is for you to answer whenever you spend your time with God. But what are your goals as a Christian? Are we supposed to have goals as a Christian? Yes, absolutely. You're supposed to have goals as a Christian. We're not just supposed to accept Jesus Christ and the Father into our lives and then sit on the couch all day. And I contemplated on naming that Bill and Don and I talked about it this week. That was going to be the title of my bulletin. But you can't just accept him and sit on the couch. That's not what you're designed for. You're designed for so much more than that. What's your relationship with the Father like? Last time I was up here, I asked that question. That's a tough one for some people. Sometimes I have to ask myself that, and I self-check all the time. And I do this on a daily basis. And I know some of you are going to think it's kind of weird, but if I go out in a public and I'm with a group of friends somewhere, I always go home and think, what did I say I probably shouldn't have said? What did I do that I probably shouldn't have done? And that's just me. I'm not saying that you have to do that. I don't believe that's biblical, but I do that to myself. I always ask, man, I wouldn't have said that. And I can't tell you, if someday my boss comes here, I'll say that in front of him, because he'll tell me. You probably shouldn't have said that. As a matter of fact, I got that this week in an email. So have you ever typed up an email? Real quick, I'll get off track here. Have you ever typed up an email, and I've done this, and you voice your opinions and you vomit out what you think should happen, and then you hit send, and then you read it, and you think, I shouldn't have sent that? I'm the king of that. I do it. So, and I make sure it goes to everybody in the agency. So I've been there a few times. Ty, Ephesians 2:10. For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus, so we can do the good things he planned for us long ago. So do the good things. What do you guys think that means? Anybody have any idea? The key word I'm looking for is works, right? And do we need works to get into heaven? No, we do not, right? We don't need works, and this can be confusing, so I'm going to touch on this briefly today. You don't need works to get into heaven. All you have to do is accept Jesus Christ as your Savior, and you just have to have that in your heart, and you're good. Your salvation is guaranteed through. There's another debate about salvation. I'm not going to get into that today, but works is a big one. Some people think, I don't need to do works. But we are designed for works, and I'm going to go over a couple of scriptures here. There's no reference made telling us, you're going to have to forgive me, my glasses are coming on and off about 100 times, that we would walk in these works. There's nothing that says or commands us that we have to do works, right? That's free will, and that's a great gift. The gift of free will is very, very awesome, and I'm glad we have it to a degree. That's completely up to us. That's where we have to take accountability for our works and what we do while we're down here with our faith. Most people don't ever ask themselves these questions. We were gifted with free will, like I said. The fulfillment of the assignments that you may do. You may think, hey, I have a specific role. Those assignments aren't made yet. There's nothing that says you have to do this. You have to come up with the assignment, which I like that. It's a two-part commitment with you and the Father. You get to create, hey, what do I do? And I'm going to go over the steps with you as to if you're confused about that or what you think you should be doing while you're down here. I'll tell you how to find out if you don't know. So the first one is through prayer. For those of you that are taking notes, I've got a couple of them here. We find out through prayer. We find out through reading the Word, along with other spiritual means of what's recorded for our lives. Then we're blessed with grace when we fulfill them. And God has that. God gives us that grace. So that's how you find out what's designed for you. And you can compare yourselves like I do. I'm terrible because I'll compare myself in everything I do. So, and I got that from my dad. And he was a great dad while he was here on the earth, but he was business orientated. And my dad was a CEO in the business world for a company, and he ultimately became the president. So my dad, 100% work orientated. And I got a lot of this from him. And he did that all the way down to the way he washed a car. I mean, he might have needed some counseling there, but I got that from him. So there's a lot of people that don't either hear this or want to deal with it. The whole work portion of it. What is my purpose here for God on earth? And I compare myself to, say, Ian and Carla Gennari. And for those of you that don't know, they have a ministry in Mozambique, Africa, and they have 3 sons, and they uprooted. And Carla's a registered nurse, right? So she makes a pretty good wage here in America, but they uprooted everything they have in this country. They moved their 3 boys over years ago over to Mozambique on the continent of Africa, and that's where their ministry is. And they moved to a town with nothing that was probably 95% Muslim. And they bought land. They cleared that land. They started a ministry. They built a baptismal. And there's pictures of this on their website if you care to go on there. And it's amazing what they've done. Now they have buildings. They just bought, I want to say 20 acres, but I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. And they've cleared that land off. And they had to drive to Malawi. Is that the capital? Anyway, the nearest biggest city in Mozambique. They had to drive there, get permits. They had to go through imagine the corruption of a third world country. And they built it up. And now they're building a medical center and a storage facility. And they've got the foundations going. And now there's walls up. And they aren't stopping. They're kicking butt over there, per se. And they come back every 3 years, right? About every 3 or 4 years, they come back and they come here and they give you an update. And it's just amazing what they've done. And they've never faltered. So one of their videos that they have is really awesome. It's Ian just gets bored and he goes out and he plays a guitar. And he's in the yard. And I played it here a couple of months ago or so. And he's in the yard playing the guitar and children just flock to him. And he's walking down the driveway singing and the kids are singing. And it's just such an awesome video. And they're doing great over there. Rather than seeing to fulfill God's specific plans, let's see, that's, sorry, I'm trying to catch up on my notes here. The perception that a lot of people have on this planet and in their life is they get born again, they attend a church, they treat people well, they work a job, they retire, and then they leave the earth or they die of some sort of sickness and disease. That's a very worldly way to look at your life, right? I mean, have you ever tried to map your life out? And you think, okay, what am I trying for here? And what do we as people do? We try to make enough money for retirement. I'm semi-retired. I can't believe that's here already, but it is, and I don't know where it went. I have no idea where my time went. But then what? What comes after that? Do we plan that? Do we plan what are we going to do after that? There's so much more to your life than thinking like that. How sad is it that we have that kind of mentality? And a lot of that is based on the world today. We have a divinely designed destiny ahead of us that we need to be paying attention to. Facing the Father and asked, what would you do? I think I asked this last time I was up here. There's a couple of questions. The first one is, and I don't need to know an answer. This is between you and your faith. What would you do if you were standing in front of the Father and he asked you, what have you done for my son while you were here? That's powerful, right? That's huge. I want to have a pretty good answer if that happens to me. Now that may happen, that may not happen, I don't know. But I don't want to be sitting there fumbling through, well, I went to church every Sunday, or I worked in the food ministry once every 6 months, or I helped Bill go pick up food. I want a good answer. I don't want to fail that question if it came to me. Okay, Ty, 1 Corinthians chapter 9. We're going to go through verse 23 through 27. Man, he's on it. I do everything to spread the good news and share in its blessings. Don't you realize that in a race, everyone runs, but only one person gets the prize? So run to win. All athletes are disciplined in their training. They do it to win a prize that will fade away, but we do it for an eternal prize. So I want to go over a story with you that I went through probably 10 or 15 years ago now. And I made a commitment to myself a long time ago to do everything, and this can change you if you haven't done this yet. I went through everything I do, and I act like I work for God. And somebody has a placard up in their office at work, and it says, "We work for God." And it's really awesome. So I read that occasionally, and that helps me to know that I may need to take it up a couple of notches. I'm not working for me. I'm not working for my motivation. I'm in a specific area purposely, I believe, by God. So I had this class come up years ago, this training class, and it's a really renowned training class, and it's going to be a little knuckle draggerish as I tell you about this. But everybody wanted to do this class, and you had to sign up. They had to do a background on you, the people that were given the class, and your command staff had to okay it. It's a 2-week-long class. It's every single day, and it's 12-hour days, 12 to 14-hour days. So it's very intense. So I put in. First year I put in for it. I got denied. I didn't make it. And then I put in for it again about 2 years later, and I got it. And I was shocked that I got it. And you have to go in a 2-man team. You have to go with a partner. So they just assumed, the people that okayed me to do this, that my training coordinator was going to go with me. Well, he said, "I'm not going. You go." So that was hurdle number 1. Hurdle number 2 was I have to sell this to my command staff and go because I'm going to be gone for 14 days. So they said, "No, you're not going." So I love to circumvent the issue. So I took vacation. And I took vacation. They can't tell me what to do on my vacation. So I took vacation and I went. So, because I really wanted it. I wanted to go through this really bad. So I get to the school, and it's a very physical school. The first thing they do, as soon as you pull up and it's 8 o'clock in the morning, you run a PT test. So I wasn't ready for that. And they don't tell you the criteria of what you're going to do the 14 days. You just know the class you're going to. So I run a PT test. I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm in decent shape. This is 10, 11 years ago. So not now. I don't know that I could do it now. So not only do you take this PT test, but it consists of running, pull-ups, sit-ups, the whole 9 yards. So it's my turn to go, and you don't see the field. You're in a classroom, and they call you out, so you do it alone. So they throw a big old vest on you, and it weighs about 10 pounds, and then they give you a rubber gun. You're on the rubber gun squad, we call it, and it's about a 10-pound rubber gun. I think I had a shotgun, and you do the PT test like that. So that killed me. So everything is pass or fail, starting from the minute you put your 2 feet on the ground at this training center, which is in North Phoenix. So I passed that, and then you go to the classroom, and then you start right away with memory drills and things of that nature. I can't tell you now at my age what I had for breakfast 3 days ago, so I would fail in this for sure. So here's what the memory test consisted of. I sat at the back of the classroom because I didn't want to sit in the front, and I wanted to kind of hide. I wanted to be known, but I wasn't volunteering for anything. So the memory portion was the guy in the front row out of 28 people at this class says his name, and everybody says their name. And when they get to the fifth person has to recite whose names he heard. So imagine, I'm in the back. I got to remember 28 people. Thank the Lord it wasn't a pass-fail. I got about halfway. I was impressed with myself. I got about halfway, and then I couldn't do it anymore. So I just ran extra stuff, and they had a big mountain down there. It's in North Phoenix by the Ben Avery shooting range, and it's an FBI special operations compound, so where they torture you. So I'm just kidding, but you'd run a mountain if you didn't do what they wanted you to do, and I'm serious, it was a mountain, and it was horrible, but I would rather do that than have to remember anything. So I got through that, and then they brought you into a classroom, and you're going through the classes, and every day you had to qualify with your weapon, with your rifle at 100 yards. You had to qualify. And it was a pass-fail. First thing, you get out of your vehicle, day 2, you're on the mat, you got to qualify, and it's timed. So that's stressful to me. So when I'm with a couple of guys, there's about, like I said, 28 people, there's a couple of guys there I know. Now, this story has a purpose, so bear with me. So you had to qualify every morning, and while you're qualifying, day 3, somebody would walk up behind you and tap you on the foot. You're in the prone position. Somebody would tap you on the back of the foot and say, run the station 2. So station 2, as you pull in, you see an obstacle course, and I'm not talking about your regular obstacle course. This was a torture course. So station 2 was a 20-foot tall piece of chain link fence. So you, with your gear, everything you brought up and over the wall, or the fence. Has anybody here ever climbed chain link fence? It's challenging because there's little tiny squares. So, and depending on what gear you have, you're going over with your gear. So up one side, down the other, it's about 100 yards. They design it perfectly. It's 100 yards from where you're shooting. Now you're doing a timed shooting drill. You run back, and you have to qualify in the time. So it got funny because they didn't do it to everybody, but they did it to every other person some days. Some days it was every 2 people. And you would be on the range, and all of a sudden your buddy that's laying down on the mat next to you would disappear, so you would know, and you would kind of laugh and go, poor dude, he's running it. So I got caught laughing, so the next day I got to do it again. So this time it was Station 5. Station 5 was a Suburban full of gear, and you had to push it 50 yards and then run back and qualify. So it just wasn't fun, but it was challenging. So I had to remind myself numerous times that I am doing this for the Lord, and he has me here specifically to do this. So I get into another classroom, and this just to give you an idea of how stressful it was. And you're around a round table, and there's a towel over the table, and there's 12 items on the table. And what they'll do is they'll take off the towel, and you have to memorize the items on the table. And then they throw the towel back on. You have 30 seconds. But what they don't tell you is they play loud rock music, they have videos going in the room, and you cannot hear anything. So you have to memorize everything on that table. They throw the towel back off, and then you go. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I remember this, I remember all 12 items, I got this is cool. So how I broke it down was all the items related to one subject. So I had it set. What I didn't know was you went all day. You took your classes all day, you had to qualify, and then at night before you went home, then they gave you, okay, here's the test, what do you remember? So it was challenging. So again, I have a point to the story, and I'll get to it here in a minute. And then there's a navigation port, and ladies, you'll like this. So there's a navigation port. I hate navigation. And I had a partner for the navigation. So picture husband and wives. How many times are we going somewhere and we don't read a map or we read directions, right? I do nowadays because I have an iPhone, and it's simple. I listen to the little voice on the phone telling me, take a right turn here. That's great. So the navigation course was 3 miles in the desert. You can't see any other student, and you're timed, and you have to read a grid coordinate map. Those of you that were in the military know you read left and up or left and down or something like that. It's a 6-digit coordinates, and then you have to find a specific item that they put out there. And all they gave us was, hey, the item's white. So I'm thinking, okay, cool. It's a green and brown desert for the most part. This is going to be easy. Well, the items were a piece of rebar nailed into the ground with a little tiny welded quarter they painted white. So it's super small. So you have to learn to read and do directions at the same time. So I got through it. About a 2 or 3 mile course. So it was interesting. So I got through that. So halfway through this school, I get really cocky. And I'm doing really well because you're shooting every day. And I get there early at the range, and I put a quarter up on a target at 100 yards. And I put a hole, I don't know if you can see this, I put a hole through a quarter, and I thought I was the man. So I showed this to my instructor, which was the first mistake. And I'm not trying to show off, I'm not that kind of guy. And he said, yeah, that's pretty good. You put it through the quarter, but it's not centered. So I'm like, okay. All right, well, I thought it was pretty cool. So I got the rug pulled out from under me. So the guy that I was shooting next to is a really good friend of mine, and I actually work with him today, and I showed him, and his name's Clint, and I said, hey, man, look at this. That's pretty cool, you know, being a show-off. And he said, yeah, that's pretty good, but nobody needs to know you scored a touchdown. And he's right. He goes, we're not here to do that. And he's right. I wasn't showing off, but he goes, hey, he laid it on me pretty easy, but he's right. We're not here to boast, or we don't need people to know we scored a touchdown. So on top of that, he came in about 3 days later, and he shows me 3 dimes that he shot at 300 yards. So I'm like, okay, I'll just throw this in the garbage. So it's a twofold story. You do things, and I got through that school. It was very challenging, and if I had to do it again, I don't know that I would. But I had something happen to me, and I love to share this with you guys. I got asked to be on our team and shoot a rifle, and you have to be very, very precise. And this was a hard thing for me to go through. People always say shooting is a perishable skill, and I never believed that. I believed that I was good enough to be precise when I needed to be precise, but I wasn't. And I stayed on that team for a month, and I failed every single day. I could not pass a shooting test. Because of my age, because of my eyes, it's perishable. I don't have that skill anymore. And for me, so I took my rifle, and I told the instructor at the end of the day, I'm done. I don't have it. And you need to know when to step down. And that was the toughest thing for me to do. So I had to go to my boss, go into his office, and tell him, hey, I've lost it. I don't have it. And he's like, they try to keep it upbeat for you, and they don't want you to fail. But this is for everybody out there. I have to be good. And I lost that. So I had to step down from that. And you've got to know when to step down. So it was interesting. But I got to pick it up here. Navigation. I'm going to get back on the navigation thing real quick. I have one more fast story. I think you'll enjoy this. So I was married at the time this happened, and I went to Hawaii. Has anyone here been to Hawaii? Well, a few people. Good. I went to Kauai. I've been there twice. It was really good. And again, I was married at the time, and my wife said, hey, I want to do this paddle trip up this river. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. It was really cool. You're going through the jungle in Hawaii, and it's a really calm river, and you have a choice of a canoe or a kayak. I chose kayak. And I'll never forget the guy's face who was there, the employee at the time. I chose a tandem kayak. Does anybody know where I'm going with this? So the guy's like, hey, what do you and your wife want to take? I said tandem kayak because we're going to cut through the water. I'm thinking it's going to be easier to paddle. So he's looking at me like, bad choice, dude. So he calls it, they don't call it a tandem kayak where I was in Hawaii. They call it a divorce boat. So I'm like, I don't get it. So we're paddling up the deal, and what happens? My wife is in front, I'm in the back. It's a tandem kayak. Yes, it's unstable, but every now and again I'd get some cold water splashed on me, and the water was cold. Not on purpose, not that I thought anyway. So, after about a half a mile of this, what do? We splash back, right? But we splash back as guys big. You're going to get soaked. So that happened. So it got interesting on the way up there. We finally made it to our destination, and coming back, my attitude was, we got into a little bit of a scuffle there on the way up, but my attitude on the way back was, listen, I'm going to tip this thing over on purpose. I'm going to take you to the bottom, and then I'm going to take your air. So that's my navigation story. Anyway. I'm sure you did. There's two sides to every story, and there is another version of this. So I'm lucky I made it out of there alive and I didn't get stabbed or something. In today's, here, I'm going to talk on the works thing again. In today's churches, we're not talked about having to have works. We are, but we're not, And I've been doing this for a long time. I've been a Christian for a long time, since about 94-ish, 95. And I've never heard this, and if somebody came up here and preached it, forgive me, but I don't remember hearing, hey, you do need works. You don't need works for your salvation, but you do need to have works as a Christian. Okay, Ty, I think I'm ready for 2 Corinthians 5:10. If I'm in anybody's way and you can't see, just shout. Tell me to get out of the way. This means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone, a new life has begun. You have to be prepared for that. If you accept Christ and you become a Christian, you got to be ready to roll with that. 2 Corinthians 5:10. Okay, maybe I messed it up. For we must all stand before Christ to be judged. We will each receive whatever we deserve for the good or evil we have done in this earthly body. There's a couple of different translations. I use my MacArthur Study Bible. If you don't have a study Bible, I strongly urge you to get one because I'm in this all the time, and it gives an explanation in detail and cross-references to whatever it is you're reading, and I love it. I'm in it all the time. Every Christian inevitably and ultimately is accountable to him, meaning the Father. The judgment does not include sins. That's taken care of, and this was my point, that your sins are taken care of. That judgment took place at the cross. We're totally clear of that. That's not the stress or any stress that we have to ever think of or have. That's an automatic thing. Paul is talking about the activities believers do during their lifetime, which relates to their eternal reward and praise from God. This is for us. This is for believers. This isn't for the everyday people that are out there. This is serious. Make your foundation Jesus Christ. Keep your roots and build your life on him. These are things we need to do. And again, I'm not telling you all this to stress you out. That is not my job, and we're not here to stress you out. We just simply want to open up new doors for you and have you ask, hey, number one, am I doing enough? Number two is, what can I do? What can I do? And I got to tell you, one of my jobs that I have is cleaning the church. And I got to tell you, I love doing it. Sometimes I bring my little 5-year-old with me, and she makes it interesting. And sometimes I'm here by myself, and I may just come up in the front row and sit for a minute and just have peace. And I sit here in the dark. So if you walk by and I'm in here and I'm in the dark, I'm okay, don't worry. But I'll clean this church, and I take it very, very serious sometimes. I'm working on a couple of areas that I'm not going to tell you about, so you focus on them, but I take it serious. And yeah, I love doing it. And there's been a couple people that have volunteered to do it, and I'm like, yeah, we'll see. If you really want to do it and it's in your heart to do it, then absolutely, I'll turn it over. And that's another thing we have to remember. Know when to let go. No, somebody else may need this. Somebody else may need to clean the church. I don't know. I love doing it right now, and I'm not asking that. I love some of my jobs that I do here, and I always look for more. I want to do more as well, time permitting, of course. Okay, 1 Corinthians 3, 9 through 17. If you're following along, that's where we're going next. For we are both God's workers, and you are God's field. You are God's building. Because of God's grace to me, I have laid the foundation like an expert builder. Now others are building on it. But whoever is building on this foundation must be very careful, for no one can lay any foundation other than the one we already have, Jesus Christ. Anyone who builds on that foundation may use a variety of materials: gold, silver, jewels, wood, hay, or straw. But on the judgment day, fire will reveal what kind of work each builder has done. The fire will show if a person's work has any value. If the work survives, that builder will receive a reward. But if the work is burned up, the builder will suffer great loss. The builder will be saved, but like someone barely escaping through a wall of flames, don't you realize that all of you together are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God lives in you? God will destroy anyone who destroys this temple, for God's temple is holy, and you are that temple. That's powerful stuff right there. That's huge. I'm going to break it down verse by verse real quick. Verse 9, you are God's building. Verse 10, your foundation, which the Greek word is the root for architect and designer. Now it's time for you to build on it. Are you building on your relationship or what your ministry should be? This is powerful. Gold, silver, and precious stones. These materials represent dedicated spiritual service to build the church. Of course, wood, hay, and straw are inferior materials, implying shallow activity with no eternal value. That's strong. It's almost hard for me to tell you that. Verse 13, revealed by fire, the fire of God's discerning judgment. These things will not stand the test of the judgment fire, the wood, hay, and the straw. So you have to ask yourself, where am I in this? What am I doing here? Are you building the precious stones, or are you part of the hay, wood, and straw? It's tough, and that's for you to decide. I don't need to know. That's up to you. Okay, Ty, I'm ready for Matthew 25:23. I want to be able to hear this someday. The master said, well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. Good job, faithful servant. I was at a restaurant a few months ago, and I think I've talked about this friend before. I can say anything to him, and I love that. I can seriously point blank him, and he doesn't get offended. But I was with a few people in a restaurant. I was with another guy who is a detective, and he's super motivated. And he was telling me about this victim that he had that wrote this beautiful letter to him thanking him for his services. And it was really awesome, and those are rare. And I had gotten one from somebody else decades ago, and I still have it. And when we don't do it, we don't do our job for the thank you. We do our job for our victims. That's how we operate. There is no thank you needed. And I've had people come up to me and thank me, and frankly, I get a little embarrassed. You don't need to thank us. This is why we do this. We do it for our victims. So my cave dweller friend next to me, who was a mediocre kind of worker, says, man, I never got a thank you from anybody. And I'm like, yeah, well, you kind of got to do something to get a thank you. So he took it pretty good. You know, could that have been a little callous to say, yeah. But is that going to break him out of his mold? Probably. Let's hope. So be ready to be told that. Verse 14, I may be going back on a couple of things here. Reward. This isn't judgment for sin, the definition of reward here, to a degree, as it's related in the Scripture. Christ already took care of that for us, so that no believer will ever be judged for sin. So that's peaceful. That should make you comforted. This is only to determine eternal reward, and I've stood up here before and I've told you, hey, make a spiritual deposit into that retirement account up there. That's the one that counts. This earthly one, yeah, it might be comfortable, but you're going to leave it someday. No matter how much, verse 15, no matter how much is worthless, no believer will forfeit their salvation. Like I said, I want you to know that. You can't forfeit it. There's a debate in there. There's some people that claim to be Christians and they're out committing murder and other things. Some people think you can lose your salvation. I don't want to get into that debate because that's a month-long debate for me. The work that we each do will become plainly open when we're there. It'll be known, shown for what it is. And for the day of Christ will disclose and declare that. So be ready for that, because it'll be revealed with fire, and the fire will test and critically appraise the character and worth of the work we have each done. So that's good. So I don't want anybody to just come and occupy a seat at church. I want you to test yourself out. See where it is you're supposed to go. That's huge for any leadership in a church. When someone finds their niche and somebody finds their job for God, and then they excel at it, they grow it, and maybe they grow it to a point where it's time for them to turn it over. And then they move on to something else, and then another person gets to grow and do that. Like Steve and Laura, I'm just going to use them as an example. I didn't plan to, but I'm going to. They've stepped up, and they do a phenomenal job in the food ministry. And I know that relieves Bill and Donna of a lot, so they can move on and do other things. That's not easy, and I don't know how that conversation went, nor is it any of my business, but you're doing a phenomenal job, and thank you, because if you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. And we can't have that attitude as leadership. Like, I rely on Ty to do a lot, and we're looking for somebody to be back in that booth right now for a little bit to do specific jobs and things, but so Ty can step down and work more on preaching and being up here on a Sunday. We're kind of contemplating that, but we're just navigating that. It's early on. Salvation is God's gift and not based on works. Again, I just want to remind you, or keeping his laws, okay? Don't confuse your salvation with eternal rewards or losses. You want those eternal rewards. You don't want to focus on the losses, is what I'm trying to say. The simple, truthful conclusion is that what we do with the cross determines where we'll spend our eternity as well in heaven. However, the way we live as believers determines how we will spend it. It's very, very important. I want all I can do. I want to do everything I can possibly do to get where I'm at and to please the Father. It's not about me as an individual. It's not because I'm greedy or I want it. It's my job. My job here is to please the Father to a degree and do what I think He is supposed to have me do, if that makes any sense. Are you guys good? I'm almost done here. Again, your life was mapped out. Every day was planned. It's up to us what we do with that schedule. Jeremiah 29:11. That's where we're going to next. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. Man, that's powerful. So when you wake up in the morning, and maybe it's tomorrow morning because tomorrow's Monday, of course, and you think, man, I really don't want to go to my job, or I don't like what I do, just remember this. Maybe that's not where you're supposed to be right now. Maybe you're supposed to be somewhere else. You have to ask him that. Navigate through that. We have to seek and find God's will in our lives. When you're spending time with the Father, what are you asking him? Ask him what he wants you to do. Ask him where he needs you to go. You may be dealing with a coworker that's undesirable to deal with. I don't have coworkers I deal with that are like that, but I deal with people that are like that. I deal with people, and I won't get into too much of a specific story, but I deal with some very undesirable people, and I'll just leave it at that. But I can't do that. So what I've started to do in my job is part of it is conducting interviews. And I have a little room. I have 2 interview rooms. I have a soft interview room and I have a hard interview room. The soft interview room has a couch in it. It's got bottled water. It's decorated really nice. And then we have a hard interview room where you have white walls, uncomfortable chairs, and a card table. And that's for specific people. And it's designed that way for a purpose. So I had a guy in the hard interview room because he had done something horrific to a child. And I got talking to him, and I could see that I was not getting anywhere. So I take a breather. I lock the door. I go out. I go to my office, turn it over to the Father, go back in. I specifically ask this guy about me. Go tell this dude about me. So I go back in there, and I do that. Breaks. And it's not about breaking him. My goal was to make sure that when he leaves the planet, whenever that is, he's going to the right place. What he does down here, it's bad, but man, what are we commanded to do? We're commanded to love them, right? As hard as that may be, we are commanded to love them. And we do that. That's happened twice in the last 2 months where I've done that, and all of a sudden I've got a list of things I do, and I'm going down the list, and all of a sudden that list in my head disappears, and all I get is stop talking and tell him about me. That's only twice in 27 years that's happened. So that's huge, and you've got to act on that. If you hear something, act on it. Please don't ignore it. There's a friend of ours, I know Bill knows who I'm talking about. He's in a gas station, and he's paying for his items, and God hits him. And he sees a buddy of his that he went to high school with. And God tells him, go talk to him now. And he says, you know what? I don't feel comfortable doing that. I'm going to back off, and I got to think it over. And he walks out, and he doesn't talk to him. 2 weeks later, he reads in the paper that guy committed suicide. And he has to think to himself, wow, what would have happened? Maybe that's why God told me. Now, that's a drastic story. That's heavy. But what if he would have talked to him? We don't know the what if. We don't know the end of the what if. But what if he did listen to that? God's going to give you another opportunity. He's never going to leave you. He's not going to stop with the opportunities that he has for you. But if you hear that, yeah, are we going to be uncomfortable sometimes? Heck yeah, we're going to be uncomfortable sometimes. Trust me. When I'm dealing with a Hell's Angel out there who is looking at me like, okay, how many ways can I kill this guy? I've already killed this dude 4 ways in my mind now, and I'm going on the 5th. What do? You know, I've hugged those guys. And some of them will take a hug. I love doing that. What am I doing? They're moving them out of their comfort zone. We got a big thing coming up pretty soon here. I don't know if anybody's aware of it. We talk about it on the leadership team. And I know I probably fuel Steve because I'm like, hey man, I'll do anything. You tell me what you want me to do. And it's a gay pride type of thing where you're going to have a lot of cross-dressing and things of that nature going on. So Steve tells me about this at a leadership meeting, and there's a flyer going around, and I'm just, but I'm doing it for God, okay? Because what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to love them, and I do. But do we want this coming to our town? Do we want to try to see what God will do? No. So I can be myself with the leadership team. Sometimes I think I'm not leaving without getting fired after our Friday meetings, but I sometimes my flesh it'll have the day. And, so I'm like, hey, well, I'll get a patrol car that night. I'll get in uniform, and the leadership team of the gay pride place isn't going to make it there in a tactful way. Okay, let me preface it. I don't violate people's rights, okay, before I get the hate mail there. But we want to go after that. because we believe a specific way. So I came up with an idea of, and the same thing with Thunder Valley Rally, because that's coming back. I can't wait. Let's go set up a tent, and we'll get a portable baptismal, which we have, and we'll baptize people. Let's do that. And I'll make signs, I'll wear T-shirts, whatever, with scripture on it, and we'll do it that way. I think that's more loving than my way. That would be fun. That would be awesome. So I know Steve's back there smiling, and he's like, I like your ideas. But anyway, they're not my ideas. Those are my flesh ideas. Okay, Ephesians 5:15 through 17. I don't think we hit that one, and I'm going to wrap it up here pretty quick because you guys have been listening to me way too long on your Sunday. So be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. Man, are we in evil days or what? Don't act thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord wants you to do. Man, that's huge. Everybody knows about the balloon, right? Oh, I got into it on the phone with a group of guys yesterday that are, I'll just call them patriots. Wow, all day. Started at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it went all day long. And we came up with some decent ideas on how to handle the balloon and where the balloon came from. Because it was alleged that it came from China, right? Alleged. Okay, we don't really know. They tracked it across the ocean, but we're not really sure where it came from. But man, I got some guys going, and it got fun, and I just purposely got them going. So anyway, if you don't know and you haven't followed the story, they shot it down, I think, over Florida. But this stinking balloon came, North Carolina, is that where it was? Okay, that's a long way. It went all the way through the Aleutian Islands, along Alaska, and of course, nobody saw that thing coming, and it got into the continental United States. And it's like, wow, how did we let it go that fast? And one guy brought up something really interesting, that it could be an EMP, and that would, can you imagine an EMP? No cell phone. No nothing, no electricity. What happens when Facebook shuts down? Whoa, crisis city, right? Anyway, the balloon's not in the sky anymore, but there was a second one, right? Did anybody hear that? There's a second one floating around? I say let it float around. Yeah. Anyway, I got off track. I apologize. See then that you walk circumspectly. Now the word circumspectly is in my Bible, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time. Circumspectly. This means accurately or precisely with great care. Wow. Does that put a little stress on what you think God wants you to do? Precisely and accurately with great care. If you're slinging frozen hamburger next door, or you're mopping a floor here, do it precisely with great care. Amen. Make sure you do that. Don't take your job here for granted, because somebody like me, trust me, I think of you over there, and I pray for you over there, and I am sure glad you're there. I'm getting goosebumps telling you that. I am happy you're doing a job, because I'm excited for you to do that job. And so is everybody else. Redeeming the time. We are to make the most of our time on this evil earth, fulfilling God's purpose and living every opportunity for useful worship and service. Every opportunity. You were created for a unique path that is extraordinary. You are all extraordinary. Don't forget that. What you do is huge. You may look at the little job you have here and think, man, I'm not effective. And I'm going to tell you something right now. That prayer room and the people that occupy that prayer room, they are effective. I've asked for prayer in the past, and man, it's there. And I look at that, to the answer to that prayer, and I'm like, wow. I didn't even ask for everything I got. I got that and more. Yeah. So it's powerful, and I don't care what you've got, what you need prayer for, whether it's a family issue, a medical issue, a financial issue, go back there. And we started out with a couple of testimonies that were remarkable, by the way. And I think I've said this before, but there's a few people that were not here when I said this. How many people here have migraines? You ever get a migraine or ever experienced a migraine headache? Yeah, they're brutal, right? I get the whole twittering in my left eye, and that's my sign I better get meds in me fast. And I got about 20 minutes. I have it down timed. I don't get them anymore. I got them when I was in my mid-40s, and it was once a month. And if I didn't get meds in me within 20 minutes, I was out. I was done for 2 days. So I'm at a family function, and I start getting the fluttering in my left eye, and I'm like, man, really? Not now. I'm at a family barbecue in Camp Verde, so I panic because I know I've got to have, and the only thing that works for me is Excedrin migraine. I had a friend who, now don't take this the wrong way, I had a friend who was prescribed Imitrex. Am I saying it right? Imitrex is an injection you put in your body for migraines, and it works. And they had it loaded up on a spring loader. And I'm like, hey, man, do you have any Imitrex? I'm like this heroin guy. And he's like, yeah, how many you want? I'm like, just hit me with 3. Boof, boof, I'm injecting 3. Didn't do a thing. So what works for me is Excedrin migraine, over the counter. If I take 3 of those, I'm golden. So I leave the family function and I go down to CVS in Camp Verde. I'm walking down the aisle. There's nobody in the store except the clerk. I go to reach for the Excedrin migraine, and I'm not kidding you. Like, someone standing behind me says, don't even touch it. Pray about it. And I turn around and I look, and there's nobody there. So I'm like, okay, well, this is a word from God. I'm not touching it. So I walk down. By the time I got to the end of the aisle, my stuff was gone. Gone. That doesn't beat the 2 testimonies that we heard, but you have to have that walk. You have to have that faith. And I'm telling you, I didn't want to risk it, because a migraine to me is horrible. I'm a guy, zits hurt us, okay? We're not as tough as women that give childbirth. But it took a lot for me, and it's like Peter stepping out of the boat, right? What happens? Jesus is telling him, come to me. That's the kind of faith that we need to build on. And what happened to Peter? Yeah, he sank a little bit. That's how I was in the store, because I'm like, I don't want to risk this pain, man. I'm out for 2 days. I'm going to be throwing up. My head, I'm going to want to saw it off. I can't deal with that. But I did it because I heard it, and I did it, and it worked. And I've had one since, but that was a long time ago. But it's awesome stuff. So remember that. Try to step out. He's not going to ever ask you to step off the roof of the Empire State Building and trust him, okay? It's going to be small steps. But have the courage to do that. Trust me, I think you'll be amazed at what the outcome of that is. So I've talked for way too long. So I'm going to end with this. Go ahead, Ty, and we'll put up Jeremiah 3:33. So I gave Ty a verse to put up, and it was Jeremiah 3:33, and he's like, hey, dude, it doesn't go to 33. What Bible are you reading? Or 3, rather. Ask me, and I will tell you remarkable secrets you do not know about things to come. Is that motivating or what? I want to know the secret things that are going to come, and that's for here. That's for today. That's for now. That is awesome right there. So if you start your Monday morning out rough, remember that verse too. Okay? Don't forget, we have the prayer rooms in the back. And one thing we didn't mention was we're on Facebook and we're on YouTube, right? We're covered all the way. So don't forget that. I hope you guys have a great week. I'm going to pray for you real quick. Father, I just lift up every person here, and I pray for whatever their needs are. Father, no matter what it is, financial, medical, family problems and issues, Father, I lift it up and I just turn it all over to you. May everyone remember that you have the steering wheel to our lives, Father, and we're just a passenger, and we love the fact that you're going to help us navigate. Father, thank you in the name of Jesus and by his spilled blood. Amen. Amen. Bill, do you have anything? Don't forget the prayer room's in the back. Please, if you have prayer, go back there, or you need prayer. I strongly urge you to go back there. There's a